Okay, let's jump right in with this really powerful idea from the 13th century poet Sadi Shirazi. He was trying to boil down the entire human experience into just a few words.
One drop of blood, 1,000 worries. Just think about that. He's saying, on one hand, our physical being is as fragile and fleeting as a single drop of blood. And on the other, we're surrounded by this vast, endless ocean of anxieties, dangers, and needs. And that leads us to the core paradox we're going to unpack today. How can our deepest feelings of powerlessness, an idea in Turkish thought known as acizlik, this profound sense of helplessness, actually be the secret key to unlocking an immense, almost unbelievable strength?
Now, this concept of agilizic isn't just, having a bad day or feeling overwhelmed. No. The source material describes it as something way more fundamental. It's called the most important feature of our very being, almost like a secret key that's woven right into our spiritual DNA.
So, what happens when we forget this? When we start to believe that we're the source of our own power, that we're the ones making it all happen? Well, check this out. We've got two incredible cautionary tales here, both warning us about the exact same danger: pride. In one story, a scholar stays away from his own hometown for a full decade. Why? Because he was afraid that all the praise from his family would make him proud and forget his true, helpless nature. In another, a respected figure, Hulusi Abi, comes home to a huge celebration, feels that pride start to swell up inside him, and then gets what the source calls a compassion slap, a spiritual wake-up call to bring him right back down to earth. You see, the core problem is this. The second we start feeling self-sufficient, we kind of just forget our need for a higher power. This was apparently such a big deal that in the early days of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad actually had to temporarily ban visits to grave sites. The reason? Tribes were competing, boasting about which of their ancestors were more numerous, a kind of pride that made them forget their real place in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, so if forgetting is the problem, how are we supposed to remember? Well, this brings us to this really fascinating concept called Felvin.
Telvin is this incredible idea. It's like God puts you on a roller coaster of different states. One moment you're on top of the world, full of joy and strength. The next, you're in the pits of sorrow and weakness. And why? Because some truths you just can't learn from a book. You have to live them.
Exactly. The whole point is to move you from what's called kal, which is just head knowledge, things you can recite, to hal, which is something you feel deep in your bones, a lived-in, gut-level state of being. And this quote just hits it home perfectly. Think about the story of Prophet Yusuf, or Joseph in the Bible, being thrown into a well by his own brothers. That wasn't just some random, awful thing that happened to him. The idea here is that it was a divinely designed lesson in total and complete helplessness. It was an experience, not a lecture.
So, you might ask, why would God put his most beloved people through the ringer like this? The argument is, it's not to harm them. It's like squeezing an olive to get the most precious oil. It's the immense pressure that turns a simple piece of coal into a sparkling diamond. And for a person, that pressure brings out the most sincere, powerful prayers and reveals who they truly are.
So let's see how all this philosophy actually boils down to a practical formula for power. And it's one you probably see in action every single day. You just might not have thought of it this way.
I want you to picture this. Think about any house, anywhere in the world with a newborn baby. Who is the most fragile, the most dependent, the most completely and utterly helpless person in that entire home? It's the baby, right?
And yet, who's really in charge? That baby. That tiny, fragile human is running the whole show. Its helplessness is its power. I mean, think about it. The baby dictates the temperature of the room, how loud you can talk, when or if the entire family sleeps. It has two full-grown adults at its beck and call 24/7, and it does this with a simple two-step formula. 1, it fully recognizes its total helplessness, and 2, it knows exactly who to cry to for help. So the secret sauce here is knowing who really holds the power. When you get that right, like the baby does, you get everything you need. But when you get it wrong, when you think you're the one with the power, well, that's a whole other story. Let's look at the classic example of getting it wrong, the story of Qarun from the Quran. This guy was fabulously wealthy, but he made a fatal mistake. He looked at all his success and said, "This was all me, my brain, my knowledge, my hard work." He completely refused to acknowledge the divine source of it all. And his punishment for that ultimate pride? For claiming he was the source of his own power, the earth literally opened up and swallowed him and all his riches whole. The lesson couldn't be clearer. When you claim power is yours and yours alone, it leads to total destruction.
And that brings us right back where we started, to this amazing paradox. Real, lasting strength, it doesn't come from puffing out your chest and pretending you're invincible. It comes from embracing that feeling of helplessness, but, and this is the key, doing it in the right way.
So for any plea for help to really work, the source says these three things have to be perfectly aligned. There's kal, what you say with your tongue. There's hal, your actual state of being. And tavir, the very attitude of your soul. You can't just be an arrogant guy demanding help with your words, because if your heart feels entitled, the whole thing falls apart. They all have to match. And this is so important. Agency isn't about being a passive victim or just throwing your hands up in despair. No way. It's an active and really an intelligent recognition of where the real power is, and then turning your whole self toward it.
So in the end, we get this complete reframing of what helplessness means. It's not a failure. It's not something you should be ashamed of. It is a tool. It is literally the key that unlocks a door to a treasury of limitless power and mercy. That moment when you feel most powerless, that's the moment you're actually holding the key.
So as we wrap this up, think about that. What challenges are you facing right now? From this perspective, maybe that feeling of being completely and utterly overwhelmed isn't the roadblock you think it is. Maybe it's the first and most necessary step toward the solution. So the question is, what door in your life is just waiting for you to use this key?